The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent. Chapter 8. The Tour. The sun was spilling golden light through the lace curtains in Evie's room at the Stony Fork Inn when a knock sounded on her door. Spinks, sprawled across the windowsill, lifted his head and let out a curious chirp. Evie set down her coffee mug, feeling a flicker of anticipation and nervousness. She crossed the room and opened the door to find Marcellus, holding a slim leather folder in one hand and a to-go cup of coffee in the other. "Good morning, Evie," he greeted her warmly, his deep voice cutting through the quiet of the inn. "Good morning, Marcellus." She stepped aside to let him in. "I come bearing good news," he said as he handed her the to-go cup, the smell of cinnamon and caramel wafting through the air. "The paperwork is all filed and finalized. You are now officially the proud owner of Lizzie's estate." Evie's heart did a little flip. "That's surreal. Thank you for handling everything so quickly." He smiled, setting the folder on the small round table in the room. "It's my pleasure. And I thought, since it's such a nice morning, maybe I could show you around the shop officially. I know you got a glimpse before, but we could go over some of the business details, Lizzie's books, the vendor list, that sort of thing." Evie hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "That sounds like a good idea. Let me grab my bag." The Silver Sage Naturals shop was bathed in soft morning light when Marcellus unlocked the front door. Evie stepped inside, her eyes tracing the wooden shelves laden with jars, bottles, and neatly stacked bundles of herbs. The air smelled of lavender, clove, and something faintly sweet that she couldn't place. Marcellus followed behind her, flipping on the lights. "Welcome back," he said with a small smile. "Lizzie really loved this place, as I'm sure you can tell. It was her haven." Evie nodded, trailing her fingers along the smooth wood of the counter. "It feels alive in a way, like it's waiting," Marcellus chuckled. "That sounds like something Lizzie would say. She always believed the shop had a soul of its own." Evie's gaze wandered to the far side of the room, where sunlight caught on a jar of rose petals, turning them a vivid red. She felt it again, the same prickle she'd experienced the first time she'd visited. It was as if someone was watching her just out of sight. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her voice low. Marcellus frowned slightly. "Feel what? Nothing?" Evie shook her head, brushing it off, though her eyes lingered on the shadows at the edge of the room. Marcellus gave her a curious look, but said nothing. Instead, he gestured toward the hallway at the back of the shop. "Let me give you the full tour." The hallway was narrow, with a well-worn wooden floor and several doors. Marcellus pointed to each in turn. "This is the back exit for deliveries. The storeroom is here, plenty of space for extra inventory. The restroom is there. And this," he said, pausing in front of a door with a stained glass panel depicting a crescent moon and stars, was Lizzie's private reading room. Evie tilted her head, intrigued. Reading room? She offered tarot readings, energy work, that sort of thing. She didn't advertise it widely. Word of mouth brought in most of her clients, but people swore by her. He opened the door, revealing a cozy room lit by strands of fairy lights strung along the ceiling. A small round table sat in the center, draped in a deep purple cloth embroidered with silver stars. A deck of tarot cards lay neatly stacked on the table, alongside a bundle of sage and a few polished crystals. Evie stepped inside, her fingers brushing against the cloth. She could almost picture Lizzie sitting there, her hands hovering over the cards, her expression calm and knowing. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Marcellus nodded. She had a way of making every space her own. He led her to the stairs at the end of the hall. Upstairs is a small apartment. Lizzie used it when she worked late or wanted some quiet time away from home. It's locked right now, but I have the key if you want to see it. Evie hesitated. "Maybe later. It feels personal. Like I'd be intruding?" Marcellus gave her a small, understanding smile. "I get that. Take your time." Back downstairs, Marcellus pulled a thick ledger from behind the counter and opened it to a bookmarked page and slid it toward her. "Here's Lizzie's vendor list. She was meticulous about keeping records. Everything's here, what she ordered, how often, even notes about her favorite suppliers." Evie ran her fingers over the edge of the page, studying the elegant handwriting. She really poured her heart into this place, didn't she? She did. It was her pride and joy. Evie paused, then glanced up at him. I heard someone else was interested in the shop, a man named Hugo Bates. Apparently, he wanted to buy it from Lizzie. Marcellus chuckled, the corners of his eyes crinkling with amusement. Oh, Hugo? Yes, he's made offers a few times over the years. Hugo owns Books and Beans, a very, let's say, curated shop of vintage and rare books, added coffee and tea and changed the name some years back. He always thought Lizzie's shop was the perfect location for an expansion. Evie raised an eyebrow. And Lizzie, did she ever consider selling? Not for a second, Marcellus replied firmly, leaning casually against the counter. Lizzie used to say that Silver Sage Naturals wasn't just a shop, it was her legacy. Hugo would bring it up every so often to sell, but Lizzie had a way of shutting him down with her trademark charm and sass. What's he like? Evie asked, curious. Marcellus shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Hugo's harmless? Stuffy, sure. He's got that stern English demeanor, always impeccably dressed, always slightly annoyed at something. He can be gruff, but trust me, he's all bark and no bite. Lizzie knew that, too. They actually got along better than most people think, despite their little spats over the shop. Evie nodded thoughtfully, filing the information away. Marcellus's relaxed tone and easy dismissal of Hugo didn't quite erase the flicker of curiosity she felt. Maybe Marcellus was right, and Hugo was nothing more than a harmless competitor. Still, something about the idea of Hugo repeatedly pressing Lizzie to sell the shop made her stomach tighten just slightly. Evie smiled faintly, remembering Marcellus telling her about how he and Lizzie met, imagining a younger Marcellus under Lizzie's watchful eye. What? Marcellus grinned. I was just thinking about how you and Lizzie met here. He chuckled, leaning back against the counter. That's a story. When I was a teenager, I wasn't exactly on the straight and narrow. Then, trying to shoplift from this very store? He shook his head. Evie's eyebrows shot up. Can't imagine that. You? A shoplifter? I know, hard to believe, right? He grinned, then grew serious. She gave me a chance. He smiled, a mix of fondness and gratitude in his expression. She changed my life. I wouldn't be where I am today without her. Evie felt a pang of guilt for the fleeting moment of suspicion she'd had about Marcellus earlier. She must have thought the world of you. I hope so, he whispered. I thought the world of her. As they left the shop, Evie couldn't shake the lingering prickle of unease. She glanced back at the building, half expecting to see a shadow in the window. Everything okay? Marcellus asked as he locked the door behind them. Yeah, Evie said, forcing a smile. Just a lot to take in. He nodded. If you need help moving in or getting the shop ready, let me know. And about that reopening, we could make it a proper event, something to draw people in. A festival, maybe? Evie's lips quirked into a smile. A grand reopening. I like the sound of that. Then it's settled. We'll start planning soon. As she watched him walk back toward his car, Evie felt a strange mix of emotions, hope, curiosity, and the faintest flicker of suspicion. And when she turned back toward the inn, Spinks let out a soft, low growl, his yellow eyes fixed on the shop door behind them.